Thank you all for coming. There's a beautiful story that Swami Kriyananda, our teacher, would share with us. I think that's too close. Just let it be a little farther away. Okay. And it's a story of Narada and Vishnu, who are going for a walk. They're wandering through the countryside. And Narada asks Vishnu, "Tell me, Master, what is this mystery of Maya? What is the true nature of Maya, delusion? I don't understand how we get caught in this delusion." And Vishnu says, "Very well, I will explain this to you, but I'm getting a little thirsty and this is a dry country. I see a little village off in the distance. Please go and get me some water, bring it back, and I will explain this to you." And so Narada runs off to the village, comes to the first little house there, the little hut, knocks on the door, and it's opened, and there standing before him is a beautiful young maiden, the most beautiful he has ever seen. And his heart immediately goes out to her and says, and he knows that he will not be happy until he can have this woman as his wife. And he looks at her and he says, my heart desires to marry you. Will you accept me as your husband? And she said, "Well, you must first ask my father." And so he goes off. Her father happens to be the head man of the village. And he says, "Sir, will you grant me the great honor of giving me your daughter's hand in marriage?" And the head man says, "Well, you seem to be a very nice young man, but as you can see, I am the head man of the village and I have no sons. The only way I will agree to you marrying my daughter, if you agree to accept, you will stay here, and when I pass on, you will take the role of head man and lead this village." And Narada is so enamored of this beautiful young maiden, he agrees. And they're married, and time goes by, and they're blessed with 3 children. And then the old father finally passes away, and Narada becomes the head man of the village. And he is a righteous, dharmic man, and the people prosper and are happy. But then a season comes, the rainy season comes, but in this season the rains are torrential, and they pour and they pour, and the river rises on its banks, and it floods the village, and everyone has to flee without being able to take anything. And Narada and his wife get their 3 children. Narada puts the little one on his shoulders. He has one in one hand, while his wife's hand in another. She has the 3rd child in her hand. But the waters are so great and so powerful that Narada stumbles, and the child that's on his shoulders falls into the river and is washed away. And then his wife, seeing this, is shocked, and she releases his hand, and she too is swept away with the 2nd child into the current. And Narada is so filled with grief that he just releases the 3rd child, and he just gives himself up into the waters of oblivion. But then he hears someone calling his name. "Narada, Narada, what is this? I see you sleeping here on the ground. I sent you 1/2 hour ago to get me a drink of water, and now where is my water? You are just sleeping here." And Narada bows at the Lord's feet and said, "Now I understand the nature of delusion." And this story is so beautiful, so poignant, how we, lifetime after lifetime, perhaps we begin in search of truth. We begin wanting to dedicate our lives to God, but one thing or another catches us, and a whole lifetime goes by, and we forget. We forget who we really are. We forget what we really want. and we get lost in the oblivion of forgetfulness until a new incarnation comes again and again. And so what I would like to share with you this morning is our 4 steps for deepening your spiritual life so that we don't forget, we don't get caught in Maya, even if we have responsibilities and family and duties in the world. That's really no reason why we can't have God central in our life. So what I want to share with you, I'll make it simple. 4 S's. The first S is that our deep sincerity. We have to realize that this world this world is not what it seems. You know, in India, you are so fortunate because it's in the very fabric of the consciousness here that there is a deeper meaning and purpose to life. In the West, where we were born and raised, this thought rarely comes up. People say, what's wrong with you? There's so many wonderful things you can buy and have and do. Well, what are you so serious about? I know when I came to the spiritual path, my parents didn't understand at all. They thought I was a little crazy. And what happened? Why are you leaving the world? Did something terrible happen to you? And I said, no, Mother, something wonderful happened to me. I found my guru. And she came to accept in time. She said, I see now how happy you are with your life. But it took some time. But the deep sincerity, you don't have to be a saint. You don't have to be perfect. But if you say, I want this, I want to awaken from delusion, then that's the first step, to believe in your own sincere desire to know truth. You may question many things about yourself, but the desire for truth is an innate desire in the heart of everything in life. Not only human beings, but why do you plant a little seed in the ground? Why does it move up towards the light when the little plant starts? Because it's seeking the light, just as all of us are seeking the light. We know that not just physical light, but the divine light of God, the light that shines behind the shadows of this world. And so trust your own sincerity. I know when I came to Swami Kriyananda, I think we've mentioned, he was a direct disciple of our Guru, Paramahansa Yoganandaji. But Swami was our teacher, and he accepted us as young students, young men and women. And he gave us the ability to believe in our own sincere spiritual search. Sometimes he would walk into a room, and we were quite new on the path, very green on the spiritual teachings. But he would walk in, and with great joy and enthusiasm, he would say, hello, all you great souls. And we would look around, thinking that someone important had come in. But he was saying it to us, to remind us, don't believe in your own sincerity. And for each of us, if we want to deepen the spiritual life, we have to start from that point. We have to start, maybe I can't meditate every day. Maybe I'm not very disciplined. Maybe I still get angry at my children, whatever it might be. But I do know I am sincere in my desire to find truth and to find God. And so that's the first S, sincerity. The second S is self-honesty. Don't think you can hide anything from God. Maybe he didn't see when I cheated on the accounting books. Maybe he didn't know when I did this. God knows everything we've ever done because he's our own higher self. There's a beautiful story of a guru who had 3 disciples. It happened, as I've heard the story, it was 2 men and a woman. And he gives them each a banana to eat. And he says, now, take this banana, leave the ashram, and go find a place where no one can see you. And when you have found that place, eat the banana. And so the 3 disciples go off, 2 men and a woman. The first man leaves the ashram, looks around, goes around back behind the ashram, doesn't see anybody there, eats the banana and comes back. And he sees his guru, says, "Okay, Master, I fulfilled your request." The master said, "Sit down, we shall see." And then the second man says he knows that there are people around the ashram, so he goes off farther into the forest. And as he begins to enter the forest, he thinks, "I don't think any people are here because there are wild animals." So he quickly eats his banana and runs back to the ashram. This took a few hours. And so he comes back and he said, "Master, I have found this place." And then the third person, the woman, has her banana, and she goes and looks. Many, many hours go by, and the guru is waiting with the other 2 disciples. Finally, she comes back and she says, "Master, I have failed. I tried and tried to find a place where no one was watching so that I could eat the banana, but everywhere I went, I felt someone watching me. I felt a presence." And the master said, "Come forward, child. You were the only one that passed the test because you understood that God, that watchful presence, is always there. And so there's nothing we can hide from God. There's nothing, in a way, we can even be ashamed of. If we acted mistakenly, it was out of ignorance. And to just give all that, to say my mistakes and my failures, I give that to you, God." There's a true story. When we mentioned Master started a school, his first act of service as a young monk up in Ranchi. This is a true story. There was one of the older students came, and he was a high school student. Usually Master just took the younger children. But this boy's parents brought him. And they said, "Our son is a terrible boy, and he smokes," this is a true story, smokes cigarettes, and he stays out late, and no matter, we beat him, but he won't obey. Will you accept him? And Master paused, and he thought, and he knew this boy was a good boy at heart, and he said, "Yes, I will accept him." And he said, and he asked him, "You have a habit of smoking cigarettes?" And the boy was honest, and he said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "All right, you may continue, but give me your pack of cigarettes. When you want to smoke a cigarette, come to me and ask me, and I will give it to you." And the boy had very mixed feelings about this, as you can imagine, but he agreed. And so for the first few days, he would go to his guru and say, "Sir, can I have one of my cigarettes?" And Master would give him one. But after a while, the desire to have those cigarettes fell away, not because Master criticized him, not because he yelled at him or beat him, simply because 2 things. He accepted him, he saw that the boy was sincere, our first S, but he also, because Master was one with God, and if whatever we offer to God, if we offer him our weaknesses, our failings, our mistakes, God transmutes that, turns it into gold, turns our restlessness into concentration, turns our angry nature into harmony and peaceful nature. And so by the boy giving those cigarettes to Master, Master broke the habit. And so whatever self-honesty, don't say, "Oh, well, I should not have these qualities if I want to be a devotee." Well, yeah, it's true. You shouldn't be angry, you shouldn't be dishonest, you shouldn't be violent. But what if you are? Does that mean you can't walk the spiritual path? No. You can walk the spiritual path, but give those things to God. Be honest about your shortcomings. And don't think that God judges you. God doesn't judge you. God is all love, all compassion, all forgiveness, and all he wants for us who are his children is our freedom, our freedom from bad habits, from wrong mental attitudes, all of these things. And so be honest with yourself, don't be ashamed. But then the third S is, so we have sincerity, self-honesty, but then self-effort. We have to try. You know, one of Patanjali's, one of the niyamas is tapasya, austerity. We have to discipline ourselves. We can't expect God to do it all. There was a young disciple of Master's, true story. He was a young Bengali boy, and he was always laughing and joking and keeping people stirred up restlessly so that their mind wasn't calm. And Master said to him, his name was Devi, you are too light-minded. You need to be more serious in your spiritual life in mixing with the other monks. And Devi was a good boy, but he liked to argue with his guru. And so Devi said and we met this man, he was a friend of our teacher, Swami Kriyananda. And so Master said, you must not be so light-minded. And Devi, not totally sincere, said, I want to change, sir, but how can I do so without your blessings? And Master said, my blessings are there. God's blessings are there. It is your blessings that are lacking, meaning you have to make the change. God can't, he can take away much, but we have to cooperate with the transformative process of the spiritual life. If we expect God to do it without any effort on our part, we will wait a very long time. We have to say, I want to change, and with God's grace, I will make that change. But in the spiritual life, for me, and I've been on the path since I was 22 years old, and I'm very grateful, more than I can ever express in a large group, for how it has changed me. But we need to understand that we need to take on discipline. If we have a tendency to gossip, to think critically about people, it's not enough to say, Master, you have to change this. We have to make the effort. When we start going into a negative thought or conversation about another person, we have to change the subject, or we have to talk about something good about that person. I have a friend who told me, a devotee in America, who told me a charming story. She said, whenever I find myself criticizing someone else, saying, oh, that person, they're not reliable and I can't trust them, she said, if I see myself walking down that critical, gossiping road, I stop myself and I say, just like me. So that person's so bad, just like me. And she said, then there's nothing more to say. And so to take on, if we want to deepen our spiritual life, it's a moment-by-moment battle. Truly it is. And in the Christian Bible, Christ says to his disciples, I was just reading this morning because it's so relevant to our world. He said, love thy enemies, bless those who persecute you, pray for those who curse you. If you only are kind to people, to your neighbors, don't the tax collectors do so much? But if you can see everyone as your own, then you are reflecting a divine state of consciousness. And that's why he said, Christ went on to say, and our Master gave wonderful interpretations of the Krishna Bible. He said, be therefore perfect, even as our Father who is in heaven is perfect. And what does that mean, to be perfect? Does it mean, okay, I don't have any problems anymore, I don't have any worries, I'm a saint? No, that's not what it means. It means we make the effort to have control over our moods, our thoughts, our reactions, our feelings. And in that, bit by bit, we find that we look back and we say, how I've changed. I know, I think about 15 years after I had been on the spiritual path, we were with Swamiji one day, and he was talking about how this person has changed and that person has changed. And I kind of thought about myself, and I said, Swamiji, I don't think I've changed that much since I've come on the spiritual path. And he was very strong. He said, how can you say that? You're a totally different person than when you first came. And I thought, well, I'm glad for you to say that, but it's hard to see in yourself. But we need to make the effort if we want to deepen our spiritual life. We can't just say it will happen by the grace of God. It does happen by the grace of God, but we draw that grace, and that's the pivotal point. We draw that grace by our sincerity, by our self-honesty, and by our self-effort. And then finally, the last S is sustained effort. Lahiri Mahashaya, who we were speaking of, he said, he had a wonderful statement. He said, speaking of sustained effort, Banat Banat Banjai, doing, one day done. So it doesn't happen in a day. Maybe it doesn't happen in a lifetime. I heard this story early on when I came to the spiritual life, Swamiji told us, but now, after all these years, it has much more meaning to me. And it's the story of a young disciple who comes to the Guru's ashram, and the Guru brings him in, gives him diksha, and then he says, okay, Chela, I am giving you the job. Go out into the forest and collect wood for our fires and our ovens. And so the young Chela does this, and years go by, and he continues in his service and his prayer and meditation in the ashram. And one day he is bringing the end of a day, and it's starting to get dark. He's bringing in his armload of wood, and he trips on a little root, and one of the branches, fallen branches that he's carrying, pulls out a lock of his hair, and he looks, and he sees that his hair has turned gray, and he realizes that now he's an old man, that he came to the ashram a young boy, he had the Guru's diksha, but he spent all these years simply carrying firewood, and he thinks, I came to find God, and here I am now, my whole life has passed, and I haven't found God. And he starts to weep. And just at that moment, the Guru comes rushing out of his little hut, and he catches the tear, and he says, don't you know that if the tear of such a great one as you would fall to the earth, it would cause famine for 7 years? And he just touches the disciple on the heart, and the now old man, faithful disciple, goes into God communion. So sustained effort. Don't think we transform ourselves. Don't think we come to know God quickly. We may, if it's our karma, but don't get discouraged if it takes time, if it takes years. But keep saying, every morning when I get up, it's a new day. Kriyananda has a beautiful book called Living Wisely, Living Well. And we probably have it out on the book table. But it's a saying for each day of the year. And one of my favorites is, it's in the month of February, today is my friend. God gave it to me to think of him and to enjoy. And so every day is a new beginning. And if we can say, today I will renew my efforts to live for God, to have sincerity, to have self-honesty, to make an effort and to sustain my effort. If we can live that way, even if we pick it up later in life, it doesn't matter. One of Master's very advanced disciples came to him as an old woman, in her 70s, and she had been an atheist all her life. But when she met Guruji, she said, "This is what I want." And in the few years remaining to her, she dedicated herself to the spiritual search. And at the end, Master said she found God in just a few years. So if we think it takes a long time, it will. If it thinks it take a short time, it will. But Master said, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. And so with these 4 S's, this will help you to deepen your spiritual life and to remind yourself. So much of it, in the Vedic teachings, it says that yoga, union with God, is smriti, memory. It's something we already know. And I myself have not experienced God communion, but everything I've read from those souls who have, when that moment comes, it's like, but I knew it already. It was always with me, tantalizingly enticing behind my life's experiences. And so, for each of us, our prayer for each of you is that we may, and for myself as well, to be self-honest, is that we may awaken from our foolish dreams of delusion and remember who and what we really are, and that is the light, the joy, the love, the peace of God.